Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's review for the X-Files Season 11. In this video I will review the entirety of Season 11 of the X-Files. So I have to start with a spoiler warning for Season 11 of the X-Files. If you haven't seen up to the end of the season, you will not want to watch this video, otherwise some things will be spoiled for you. So, I had covered Season 10 of the X-Files one episode at a time, as there were only 6 episodes in Season 10, and I wasn't very happy with Season 10. If anyone had seen my coverage of that season, they would see I was a bit lukewarm on the season. Certain parts I really didn't like. Overall, I really did not like what they did with the mythology, so I wasn't that interested in seeing a season 11. And when it first started, I was like too busy with doing too many other things, so I didn't actually watch it weekly as it aired. I waited until just this week when it finished airing and just binged the whole season at once. And so I'm going to review the whole season at once. So I heard a lot of comments with people suggesting that it was actually really good, and they wanted to hear my thoughts on it. And I've heard some positive things about the seasons. A lot of people saying it was much better than the previous season, which made me a little curious to check it out. Although I would say after the last season, my interest was not that high. So I did finally get to watching it, and I had mixed feelings about it. I will say overall, I think there's some good and there's some bad. I would say overall, as a whole, I would agree that it was better than season 10. However, that being said, I kind of think there shouldn't be a season 12. I think that even though I enjoyed this season, it did have a lot of issues, and I think they should kind of end the show now. And I actually think it would be a really good place to end this show, better than season 10 at least. So maybe it was good that they had this season to sort of end on a high note, but I think they should cut it off here. But anyway, the thing about season 11 and kind of X-Files in general is that it's really episodic. Even though it has through storylines, each episode is kind of unique, so it's different than reviewing some other shows that I binge all at once, like a Netflix show like Jessica Jones or something like that, because that is basically one story where the episodes kind of blend together, and I don't really distinguish the episodes so much. I just look at it, oh, here's the whole season. Whereas the X-Files, each episode does stand out on its own, so I am actually going to structure this review by going episode by episode, because my thoughts on each episode are actually extremely different, so I think it's actually worth taking a look at each episode. So let me start with episode 1 of season 11, My Struggle 3. And it's kind of annoying because My Struggle 1 was the first episode of season 10, My Struggle 2 was the finale of season 10, so now they're doing My Struggle 3 being the premiere of season 11, and My Struggle 4 being the finale, which I think is pretty stupid. Any episode with the title My Struggle on it, I find sucks. And this might be the worst of all of them. Like, if I had, because before I watched this episode, I went to Rotten Tomatoes, however you say it, tomato. Anyway, I went to Rotten Tomatoes and looked at the score for each episode, and this one was rotten, and the finale as well, My Struggle 4, was also rotten, but every other episode was fresh. So these were like in the 30s, where all the other episodes were in the 80s or higher. Some even had 100. So that sort of warned me that this first episode was going to suck, but then it was going to get better, and then the last episode was going to suck as well, It was a great way to curb my expectations, because had I not known it, had I just watched this as it aired, I would not have watched the rest of the season. I would have looked at this episode and been like, fuck this show, and given up entirely. But I had that foreknowledge that no, this first episode sucks, but it gets better, so that actually was good. It was beneficial because it allowed me to stick with it. This episode, it may be the worst X-Files episode I've ever seen. It is just a string of cliches and suspenseful moments that have no coherency. There's absolutely no connection to anything that's came before. This is something that season 10 did that I hated, is that it ruined the mythology. Mythology was always my favorite part of X-Files. Like, there's people say, oh, some people like Monster Week, some people like mythology. Mythology was always my thing. That is until these 2 new revival seasons where they completely ruined the mythology. Well, by far these mythology episodes are a freaking joke. They're a mess. And part of the reason why they did that is because they're kind of retconning a lot of stuff that was already established in the mythology, just making up their own shit. And I noticed that season 11 is kind of even retconning some of the stuff in season 10, which, can't really blame, but it does make it an even further mess. First of all, this episode begins with one of the biggest cliche TV cop-out known to mankind. It was all a dream. So, the finale of season 10 ended with like this virus wiping out the human race and people were dying everywhere, and then they go to a bridge and there's an alien thing. Any which way you slice it, that episode was not shown to be a vision or a dream. That was shown to be, that's what's happening. And so it's very obvious that the writers got back, all right, what are we going to do for season 11? They couldn't figure out a way to get the heroes out of this mess, to undo it, so they went with the cheapest, laziest cop-out ever. Oh, let's just say it's a vision that Scully was getting from her son. Oh my God. What bad, horrible writing. I mean, and to be slightly fair, that episode, the finale of season 10 did really suck to say, oh, no, that actually happened. And I can see the appeal to that, but it doesn't change the fact that that is the laziest cliche in history. And on top of that, as I said, the entire episode, even other than that, even what they did in the episode, it was just made no sense. None of the characters, I hate what they did with Reyes. I wish they just made up a new character for her instead of bringing her back, because she's completely out of character. She wasn't even involved with the Smoking Man when she was in the show. The Smoking Man was already off the show. And of course, the Smoking Man. I cannot take this show seriously. I'm sorry, I cannot take this show seriously because the Smoking Man is alive when his head fucking exploded in the finale of X-Files proper, say season 9 finale, whatever. Yeah, the Smoking Man's head, literally saw it explode. He got shot by a missile. I covered this a lot in season 10. But the whole entire time I'm looking at the Smoking Man, I'm just like, the Smoking Man used to be a good character. He used to be one of the best TV villains. And I did a top 10 TV villains and he was high on it. Now he's a fucking joke. He's a joke. I cannot take him seriously. They try too hard. I'll put it this way. They try to say, oh, we know the Smoking Man's an epic villain, so we have to bring him back and do all. And you can tell the writers are just trying hard. Oh, I'm so evil. And now he's a joke. He's no longer the best villain. Now he's one of the worst. He's a fucking joke, and I can't get over the fact that he's alive. It really erases the stakes for the rest of the season, for the whole show, really, is because I'll jump ahead to the finale. I gave the spoiler warning at the start, so you should have seen the finale. But the finale, Skinner died. I was like, well, he's not really dead because death is meaningless in this show now. It totally takes the stakes out from under you. So in this episode, when they're like, oh, Mulder, you're gonna die, I was like, yeah, but is he really? Even if he does, he'll just come back to life, which actually they did end up doing a version of that. But so I can't take any of this mythology in the show seriously. And the episode in particular was just a mismatch of all the cliches, the different characters be like, oh, you're this, and the big reveal is oh, William, that Smoking Man is really the father of William and not Mulder, and then we would learn more about this later on, that it was an experiment. I'm like, oh my fucking God, are you serious? This is even more of this terrible retconning just like throwing in cliche. But however, this episode did make me realize that the X-Files proper did already do this. They did, so the show is already working off of a ruined mythology, because Mulder being Smoking Man's son is ridiculous, and then the Agent Spender, also being his son, and then like them killing off of all of Scully's family and all. So they kind of already like ruined the mythology by doing all these blah 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 beats, and so they kind of stuck in this. I'll touch more on this later, but this is why they need to just stop the show now, and if they want to keep doing X-Files, reboot it. That's what I say, because the mythology is a fucking mess now. They just completely ruined it. And it's like in the next episode where, they have Langley, and just jumping ahead a bit, but still talking about my struggle. But anyway, in the next episode they have Langley appear, and they're like, oh, but he died. And I'm thinking, so? So what? The Smoking Man can come back to life after his head freaking explodes, and Langley being a ghost and coming out here is like no big deal, of course. So, the death is meaningless in this show now. But anyway, other than that, this episode was just so bad. It's just like, Skinner would be like, oh no, and they would say a word, don't test me. Like, all the conversation, each line of dialogue is just cliche thrown out to, oh, this is a suspenseful moment. It's like, this is key on bad writing. So my rating for My Struggle 3 out of 10 is a 1, the worst. Anyway, let me finally move on to next episode, which is this. That's the one I just alluded to with Langley when he appeared. This episode was actually pretty decent. It was, and here's the thing, a lot of these episodes, I will say, they did recapture the faith of the X-Files, or the feel of the X-Files. But the thing is I was never as big into the X-Files proper as many other people did. Like, I watched the whole entire series, like I binged it twice. And I watched it off and on when it was airing. And it's not a really good show to binge to, because it gets really repetitive, just saying. So I was never as big, because it uses a lot of like horror cliches and a lot of moments. So I actually think season 11, ironically, is one of the better seasons of the show, because it does leave out a lot of fluff. And this is an example of a good episode. And this is a great, after that crappy premiere, that to show you now it can still do X-Files as X-Files, and plus it's updated, and this really shows you how it's updated for a more modern audience, who it deals with the it kind of touched on that ruined mythology a bit about, because that other dude, fat guy, whoever he is, his plan was to sort of digitize everyone and send them off to another world or whatever. So but that part of it I didn't mind, because it worked well for this story they were telling in this episode. And it was the through story of the Russian agents, all of a sudden attacking Mulder. It was very suspenseful. The suspense and the action was done well in this episode. And the through storyline about Langley, being this computer program saying, am I dead? And then them trying to find a way to stop it all. It was really well done. So I'm actually going to give this an 8 out of 10. Extremely good. So after that, we got an episode called Plus One, and this is probably a better example of what I mean by this is a typical X-Files episode. So those who love the X-Files will love this episode. But I wasn't as big of a fan of these type of episodes, even when they were in the X-Files proper. It's kind of more tolerable here because there's only 10 episodes this season, so I don't have to sit through like 5 of them in a row like one of the earlier seasons that had like 24 episodes. But it is like a stereotypical X-Files episode where it has that signature creepiness of, and I do think the creepiness kind of worked with the brother who worked at the jail, who's really, weird and absurd, but in an interesting way. And of course, the woman who's in the mental institution, how they played hangman with each other, and that meant they killed people. So this is actually, I would say this is a better example of or one of the better examples of these type of episodes that I got sick of in X-Files proper. So I do think this is them like saying, let's make a signature X-Files episode, but let's do our best at it, because it was suspenseful towards the end, when those two people, each one wanted to kill Mulder and the other wanted to kill Scully. So and you see the Scully and Mulder double, but then they got so angry with each other they ended up killing each other. That was kind of ironic. So it was kind of interesting. So I'm going to give +1 a 7. Very good. So next episode is The Lost Art of Forehead Sweat. Now this is the typical, each season has to have at least one of these signature comedy episodes, and usually I refer to them as overrated comedy episodes because they're usually the fan favorites. So you look at top 10 episodes, they pick out all the comedy episodes, and a lot of them I think are either not as good as people say they are, and then there's a few that are outright horrible, like the Prometheus, whatever that one, that was horrible. But most of them, like, I'm trying to think of, Bad Blood's a good example. Most of them are just not good, like they're just overrated. They're not horrible episodes, it's just nowhere near as good as people say they are. But this episode, there's a few comedy episodes that I don't think are overrated, that I think do deserve all the praise they get, like Clive Bruckman's Final Repose, and what was the other one? Can't think of it off the top of my head. It was like Jose, Some Things That Came From Outer Space. Like, those ones are really good and do deserve it. And I think this episode actually falls in that category, or the category of the comedy episodes that are awesome. And in fact, I absolutely loved and adored this episode. Whereas the season 10 one, I thought it was that was an overrated comedy episode. It was okay, it was pretty decent, but people were like, oh, this is what the X-Files is all about. Which, that is not true, because there's only 1 or 2 comedy episodes a year. To say this is what the X-Files are all about is bullshit, because the majority of it is not what it's all about. The majority is Storyway Monster Horror Stories. But anyway, regardless, each season has their comedy episode, and this may be, I don't know, this could rival Clive Buckman's Final Repose for my favorite comedy episode of the entire show. This definitely my favorite episode of the season. I'll say that right now. This was hilarious. It was so well constructed, and it was absolutely amazing where it played off of, and the silliness actually really worked, because part of the issues I have with a lot of these comedy episodes, particularly Bad Blood, is that the characters will suddenly act out of character. Like Mulder and Scully will totally have their characters completely changed just for this one episode for comedic purposes, which I cannot stand. But in this episode, they weren't acting out of character. They were completely in character. And moreover, the guest, character that they had to, spin this comedy was so well done. He was so hilarious. It made so much sense. And just the way they would play off of one thing. It was such a great way to open the episode with this fake Twilight Zone episode. And they played into the whole Mandela effect. And just the way they played on that, and how the guy said, no, it's actually called the Mingle effect. It was hilarious. It was so absolutely brilliant. And when they stopped halfway through the episode, when the guy was like, oh, I was the third member of the X-Files, and they did the opening of the show but had that guy in the credits, and then they showed scenes from all the classic episodes but had the guy making wisecrack jokes like, uh-oh, that's gonna hurt. Oh my god! This is Rick and Morty level comedy gold, in my opinion. This is great attacking cliches of TV shows, and it's making fun of itself too. And it was so brilliant. I absolutely loved it. It was hilarious. And then, of course, it topped it all off with that guy telling the story about how they actually met an alien who was acting like Donald Trump, saying, oh, we're going to build a space wall so you guys can't leave Earth. And they're saying, oh, I don't know, most of you are rapists. I'm sure some of you are good people, but most of you're just sending your worst into this. So it made amazing, and of course, I didn't even talk about the Dr. They. That was such a brilliant bit, because he kept saying they, and who is this ominous they? No, there's this guy named Dr. They, and then he actually meets Dr. They, and he just appears everywhere, and it's hilarious. I'll show you this YouTube video that explains him, and then he starts talking about, the comments, let's look in the comments, this guy just says meh. It's hilarious. It's an update. It's like a comedy gold, classic comedy episode of the X-Files, but updated to fit more modern times. It was absolutely, totally, and completely brilliant. So my rating for the Lost Ark of Forehead Sweat out of 10 is a 10, the best. Anyway, we come to next episode, which is Ghoulie, which is kind of a mythology episode. It kind of dips into that shitty mythology, but manages to not suck as much because it focuses more on Mulder and Scully's son, William, who of course we find out is actually Smoking Man's son, but don't get me started on that bullshit. Anyway, the episode itself, it begins like a typical X-Files episode where you see the two girls like fighting each other because they think the other one's a monster. But then you find out it was William who's making them think that. And I was like, this guy's a colossal asshole. This seems like the show wants you to relate to this character and feel for him, but it's making him... It's doing a really bad job. It kind of makes him come off as a whiny teenager, and he apologizes to the girl. Oh, I didn't think you'd hurt each other. It's like, you made these two... first of all, he was seeing two girls at the same time, which right there makes him an asshole. And then he has them go meet to each other and has each other see each other as a monster, so has them like try to kill each other. And how they, they still love him after that, still want to see him after they learned what he did is literally unbelievable. I just can't take it seriously. But that being said, the episode itself actually wasn't too bad. Because there was a lot of... I did think it was very effective in its suspense with Mulder and Scully trying to find William. And it was actually really interesting how... he could make people think that he was other people. So I think the final scene where you see the Dr. Candle from Lost, who is also Jules Pierre Mao from The Expanse, who pretends to be that guy who's actually just, in the episode he's a book author, where really it's William. So, Scully sees the, Jules Pierre Mao, but really it's William having that facade, and she was able to say, I'm sure I would have liked to know you better, and I'm sure you're a really nice person. And that's great. I think that was a really touching way to end. It's kind of undone by the finale, but anyway. So yeah, my rating for Ghoulie out of 10, I guess I'll give this a 7 as well. Very good. Anyway, let's move on to Kitten. This is kind of more the throwaway X-Files episode. It's reminded me a lot of these boring episodes I had to sit through on my binge, where it's just like, can we get this episode over with? It was about Skinner, his old, Vietnam days or whatever, and this guy going around killing people. We find out it's actually his son because the government's doing experiments on soldiers. And don't get me wrong, I know I can just see the comments now with people like, oh, this tackles an important subject of veterans and how they're mistreated and how the government can take advantage of them. Sure, that is an important subject, absolutely, but other stories, episodes, and films have tackled this a hell of a lot better. The way this episode tackles it, not very well, and that's done by the fact where this episode overall was just boring and uninteresting and hard to follow. That being said, it wasn't horrible. It's just one of those throwaway episodes. So my rating for Kitten out of 10 is a 5 average. So next we get into the episode, which is RM9SBG93ZXJ Z. And yes, I'm saying Z instead of Z because I live in New Zealand. Get over it. Anyway, so yeah, this episode, it's good try. Nice try. Better luck next time. I think I can see that a lot of people maybe would have loved this episode. And it was interesting. And again, this is definitely the one where they try to modernize it the most. And there were aspects of this episode I did really enjoy. I could imagine people saying, oh, it's like a Black Mirror episode. But honestly, Black Mirror episodes are much better than this one. But anyway, I guess I suppose it had that same similar feel because it was about like technology and the downside, although this episode was far more on the nose than any Black Mirror episode would be, where it's like the technology is evil. It reminds me too much of like Christine or something like that. But the rational explanation they gave for it actually made sense, and that prologue was pretty interesting with the robotic voice explaining that they're trying to teach an AI how to be more human, but they learn from human behavior. So if they learn from a bunch of trolls and people who are being assholes to each other, then the AI will become an asshole because that's how it learns. And you can see it's kind of has a comedic vibe to it because the whole thing is because Mulder wouldn't give it a tip. It all starts out because he ordered the wrong thing. He got this goofy looking fish thing, which of course he didn't want to eat, so that's why he didn't tip them, and he was adamant that they wouldn't tip, but because of that, all the machines go out to get them. I just find the premise of that a bit silly, and not in a good way. It just doesn't really work. There are aspects to it I do like how they highlight all the different technologies and how could be really invasive, and it does make you think of how dependent we are on modern technology. Like I do like the episode makes a point of having very minimal dialogue, particularly in the opening scene where Mulder and Scully are sitting there and they're not talking to each other, they're just texting and communicating through technology, and there's even no like physical people that work there. They're just a bunch of machines that they're communicating with, and they do it through, using their phones or whatever, never like actual communication. At the end of the episode, they're at an actual cafe with actual people serving them, and they're having an actual conversation. They put their phone down and they have actual human contact. I did like that message of it because I do like the message of not being too dependent on technology and trying not to lose that human connection. And I think that did come off well in this episode. But the whole basis of the machines out to get you, I got kind of boring after a while. So I'm going to give this episode, whose title I'm not going to say again, a 7. Very good. Okay, so next episode is Familiar, and this is like a lot of other X-Files, typical X-Files episodes, but done to the best amount. It's like the highest quality of the type of X-Files episode that I've seen a bunch of times before, where, someone dies in the woods, and so Mulder and Scully go to this, small town in the middle of nowhere to investigate this weird thing, and Mulder says, "Oh, it's witchcraft or whatever." This case is witchcraft, but other episodes could be different things, werewolves, whatever. But in this case, it's witchcraft, and Scully's like, "No, that's bullshit. It's just like some guy killing people," and they find out there is actually witchcraft involved. So there's been a lot of episodes like this, and I actually do think this is one of the best examples of this episode where it worked very well because it was really engaging. It was incredibly creepy. I mean, that weird child's thing. Like, as soon as he had that child's toy, I'm like, that is a creepy ass looking toy. In real life, I don't think any kid would have a toy that's creepy looking. I mean, maybe the art department made it a bit too on the nose that this was a creepy motherfucker. I can see kids being into it. Like, when that girl was watching this Teletubby look-alike, so that was a bit more, I could buy that more, because they're actually just do look like fluffy Teletubbies, and they did come off as creepy. Whereas that, I can't remember his freaking name, but the other, clown-looking dude, he was definitely creepy as hell. Any kid would be terrified of a toy of that. But anyway, I did think this was very well done, especially like the through storyline with the police officers, and that it was a really good like murder mystery done to the X-Files way. And again, I think this is doing the best version of that as it could, because I was really engaged. I didn't know what was happening. I was curious to find out who done it, and what those scenes when the children were killed were very effective horror, very scary. It was very disturbing, and I think the ending made a lot of sense. I did like how it ended up being, the woman who found out her husband was cheating on her, so she said, "Oh, I'll just cast a spell," but it ends up getting out of her control and killing her children. I thought the irony to that was very effective, and it was a very scary episode. But let me get into the elephant in the room. This episode was trying to be like It. It's like, oh, the movie It came out and it was very successful, so let's make an episode like that. It's so... I mean, the kid... Okay, first off, the star, so as soon as they see this kid who gets killed by a scary-looking clown, he's like, follow me to the woods. It's It. They're doing It. And, alright, the kid is wearing a yellow, bright yellow raincoat. It's the exact same kind of raincoat that the kid who got killed in It was wearing. I mean, could they perhaps be less obvious that they're ripping off It? I mean, come on. And that scary clown dude, again, a lot of people said that about the clown in the newest version of It, that he looked scary as hell and no kids would actually take him seriously. They would be terrified of him. I think this clown dude they had in this episode was even worse. That's I already talked about it. He was even worse than the one that's scary. No kid would ever go anywhere near this fucking scary fucker. So, in that regard, you can say, yes, it is definitely a ripoff of It. But, I did find the, again, the story was very effective. It was like one of the high-end murder mysteries. So, I'm actually going to give Familiar a 9. Excellent. So, next episode is Nothing Lasts Forever. This is the episode, oh yeah, this is an episode I could say that was a good idea that was never fully fledged. This seems kind of like a first or second draft, in that they kind of sped this episode to get made before they fully got it. It's very poorly structured. You never really got that involved, and it spent a lot of time, wasted a lot of time with, you know, this cult, or the woman who was like wanted to live forever, who's an old TV star. And I just did not buy like that all those cult members would actually be as brainwashed to think, oh, we're gonna live forever, when it's obvious that they're just being killed off and having their organs harvested in order for these two people to live forever. I mean, unless there was like some mind control actually going on, but the episode never mentioned that in particular. I don't know, it just wasted a lot of time with these two characters sort of going back and forth. You never got invested in the story. And plus, like the whatchamacallit, the woman who was killing them off, like who was like the vampire hunter, basically reminded me of Buffy the Vampire Hunter or Slayer or something like that, or someone from, or the woman from Underworld, kind of reminded me like that. They never explained like how she was able to do all those, you know, karate moves and be like this badass. Like, they just to say, oh, she's just a normal high school student. Well, how she can go around killing people like that? And they didn't do enough character development on her. She felt very fake. As did her relationship with her sister. I wasn't invested at all in her or her sister. And the whole thing with her being this badass karate move just felt very cliche, very Hollywood, the whole thing felt fake. And the ending, where they resolved everything, I was not interested at all. So I'm going to actually give Nothing Lasts Forever a 4 poor. Okay, so now we get to the final episode, My Struggle 4, and this episode actually, as much as I've been shitting on the mythology episodes, this actually wasn't as bad as the premiere episode. It was kind of interesting where you have Mulder chasing after William, and you see William's perspective, where he knows that his adopted parents were, adopted him, and he realizes that Scully was his mother, and he knows that Smoking Man's his father, and he has these visions of Smoking Man killing Mulder. But the thing that really bothered me about this episode was the fact that he kept running away from Mulder and Mulder and Scully, mainly Mulder. If he has these psychic abilities, he should know that they're there to help. And it seems like I can see some people defending this, but I'm sorry, I just don't buy it. I think the reasons they try to give is because he thinks that if he's involved with them that they'll get hurt, so he's running away for their safety. But if that was the case, he would still at least talk to them a bit more, not be. And it seems like the main reason he runs away from is plot. Keep the plot going, because we can't actually have them meet up. We couldn't have that, could we? No. And then the episode begins with Kirsch saying, "Oh, I'm shutting down the X-Files and firing Mulder and Scully." Yes. Wow, that's something we haven't seen a billion times in this show already. Really? How many fucking times? They did this in season 1. This is how much they did this. They did this so many times. And they even did it specifically with Kirsch before. I'm shutting down the X-Files. Oh, wow, this is a storyline that we haven't seen before. And this is really what has me thinking they need to end. They need to end the show. They're just repeating themselves, doing the same shit. Literally, when he said that, I slapped my forehead, and I was just like, really? Really? You're doing that again? Shutting down the my interest level in that was on the floor, because I'd seen it a billion times before. I was like, oh no, he's shutting down the X-Files. And again, like, death is meaningless in this world, so who cares about anything? Who cares about anything, really? But, yeah, so I had a lot of issues with the episode. But it was kind of interesting the way that they retcon the mythology now, where William knows that if Smoking Hand gets his hands on him, that he'll use him to wipe out the human race with this virus or whatever, which totally was not how they described it in season 10, but whatever, we'll go with this new retcon story. And so it was the chase between trying to find William and Mulder. And I do love how they actually didn't hold back in killing off all these villains, like that fat dude and his henchmen. They just went full throttle and killed him. It was really interesting, suspenseful, the way that one guy was tracking Mulder, and it did sort of raise the stakes, where the closer Mulder got to William, that was close to allow these guys to get to William. So it was definitely better than the premiere, but it still was littered in flaws, like the whole Monica thing. And again, like the Skinner, like if the show comes back, Skinner's alive. There's not even a question about it. And it's like, oh, Skinner's dead, but hopefully the show won't come back, so it could leave like ambiguous, like, you don't know, maybe Skinner actually is dead. But anyway, yeah, this episode was okay, I guess. So the reason why I think they need to end the show is because they've, as I said, they completely ruined the mythology. And this is a good ending point, though, because they killed off all the bad guys, even though, like, they shot the Smoking Man. Shooting him? Are you serious? You blew up his head already and he came back to life. Shooting him is like slapping his wrist. It's like shoot him. But anyway, and plus, it wasn't such a shock that William was still alive. Like, he did the thing where he pretended to be Mulder and he got shot, and they showed the final clip with him being alive. I'm like, I wasn't even slightly surprised. Of course, death is meaningless in this show. But anyway, it's a good place to end, because they have Scully, reveals that she's pregnant with Mulder's child this time. So again, this is now the whole retcon, because they did this back in season 7 or whatever, and this whole time we're thinking Mulder and Scully already had a kid child, and now he's a teenager, but they're saying, nah, that wasn't really Mulder and Scully's child. That was just an experiment that Smoking Man was doing on Scully. Now, this is actually Scully and Mulder's child. And I'm just like, how do we know this is... If the show keeps going, this new child's going to turn out to be another alien or experiment. Bullshit. So the show needs to end. So it can end on a happy note. It can end on a note with Mulder and Scully living happily ever after with their actual child. And into that. And some people say, oh, well, William's being shown to be alive, so the show can keep going because of the storyline with him. Screw that. Some people saying, oh, they could even do a spin-off with other characters and have William. Nah, I'm not interested enough in this character to see him in the spin-off. Just end the show and reboot it. Start from the beginning. Get young actors to play Mulder and Scully and just retcon the entire mythology. Start fresh so you can do other things and keep the show going from that. That's, if you want to keep doing the X-Files, that's what you need to do. Now, apparently, Gillian Anderson says she doesn't want to do it anymore, and Chris Carter says he's not going to do it anymore if he doesn't have one of the two leads, because I guess he learned from his mistakes with season 8 and 9. We're trying to do it without Fox Mulder. It just did not work. So, hopefully, they will say, nah, we're done with the show. Because Chris Carter himself said that he didn't picture this episode being the series finale. He kind of pictured it being more, but he's open-ended. Like, he doesn't know if what's going to happen with the X-Files when Disney's buying out Fox now, and so they're going to own the X-Files, so who knows what they're going to want to do with it. So he's really open to, he doesn't know at this stage what's going to happen. I'm telling you, reboot the fucking thing. Just reboot it, start from scratch. You totally fucked up the mythology could not possibly be more convoluted. You need to just end it now. Plus, Mulder and Scully, aging a bit, and just recast younger characters and start from the beginning. But anyway, and this would be a good ending for the show. As I said, this would be a good way to end it, because they killed off all the bad guys, even though all they did was shoot the Smacky Man. But anyway, they killed off all the bad guys. They got, found out that she's pregnant, and they ends on them embracing. There you go. Perfect ending to the show. End the show here. But anyway, my rating for My Struggle 4 is a 3, very poor. There were some interesting things about it, but not a good episode. Anyway, that is it for my review of the X-Files Season 11. I'll give my rating for the season. Overall, as a whole, I'm going to say it's a 7. Very good. There were some great episodes. There were some horrible episodes. And a lot of episodes that were pretty decent. So, overall, I'd say this is a good season. Definitely better than Season 10. That's for sure. It may, in fact, be one of the better seasons of the entire show. But, yeah, a lot of issues. A lot of issues. But I've always had issues with the X-Files, to be honest. Anyway, that is it for my review of the X-Files Season 11. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, you can check out some of my other reviews. I do reviews on shows like Game of Thrones, The Expanse, Star Trek, Babylon 5, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.